Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. Sorry, we're starting a little late, had some technical problems, but we solved them, which is great because we are so fortunate to have with us here Representative E. Werner Reschke. Werner is from District 55, as they are numbered 55. Like I can't drive 55. It's a good way to
That's right.
remember it.
Yep.
It's the Crater Lake District. Welcome to the show, Representative Reschke. And why don't you just I've got a map of your district, but why don't you kind of describe it so that people know kind of what the boundaries are and what area of the state you're representing?
Yeah, so super. So if you're in Bend and you head south on Highway 97, as soon as you exit Bend, follow Highway 97 till you get to the border of California, and that's my district.
There, I just stuck it up
Yeah,
there.
there it is. That's it. It goes as you get closer to Klamath Falls. It only handles the eastern part of Klamath County, and the western part is then by Representative McIntyre. But I have all of southern Deschutes and around the eastern side of Bend, Deschutes County, and all of eastern and northern Klamath County.
And I see the word forest a lot as I look through
Yes, yes, I've tried to register trees; they will not register.
there. But if they could vote, I
We,
know
we'd be
they
in
would
business.
we'd be in business and they'd be voting for you and for
That's right.
Republicans because they're tired of just uh,
Burning up.
being burning
Yeah.
up. Exactly. Well, let's talk about that topic here in just a second. Because you guys just ended the legislative session. Here, I'll take this off my screen for now. And it was an interesting session, probably the weirdest one in the way it ended that I can recall in all the
Yeah.
years that I've been following it. And I listened to OPB, and it's not often that OPB and I are going to have the same take on this, but that's what they said too.
Yeah.
And it was not unusual for that to be Republican versus Democrat, but this one seemed to have kind of a Democrat versus Democrat vibe. Like something went haywire there. And then at the last second, they threw a Hail Mary and asked for Republicans to kind of save them. And they're like,
Yeah.
after this kind of compromise that you've shown.
Right.
So what's your take on the session? What's the post game from your perspective?
Uh, yeah. Good question. I think. After a couple of weeks away, I'm able to actually think about it without going into convulsions. It, wa- it was pretty bad, and it was bad from the perspective that at least in the House, the Democrats said we don't need you. We don't need you at all. We're just going to run our agenda and say so be it. Show up and provide quorum is pretty much. So we say we're ready to engage. We're willing to help. We want to craft some good policy here. We have some ideas, and I think the transportation bill, House Bill 2025, is uh, kind of the illustration of how the session went, and that in order to go into talking with Democrats about that bill, you had to agree to be willing to raise taxes. That was the entrance into that conversation. And House Republican just said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not starting from that position. We may get there after we look at what needs to be done, but we're not starting there. And so then the speaker went around and grabbed two Republican House members and said, yeah, we're willing to start there and move forward. So that kind of fractured our caucus a little bit. But the bill they came out with was a $15 billion bill tax increase over 10 years, which is the largest tax increase in Oregon's history.
Wow.
And they couldn't even get their own members on it, let alone Republican members on it. So then they quickly, so that bill was coming to the floor. They said, we don't have the votes for it. It will fail. So send it back to committee. So we sent it back to committee. They then scaled it down to only be $11 billion instead of $15 billion over 10 years, still the largest tax increase in Oregon's history. And that bill just stalled out, never got to the floor because they could not get the Democrat votes. They have 36 in the House, which is 3/5, which is required for a tax vote, which this was.
Yeah.
All they need to do is get all their people lined up to vote yes, and Republicans can protest. We can say we oppose it, but we can't stop it. They couldn't do that. They couldn't
Yeah.
get their team lined up, so the bill fell apart. And so now you hear the governor out there threatening to lay off 4, 5, 600 ODOT workers, and they're threatening to close, places out in rural Oregon. etc. And Republicans actually proposed a plan. It was House Bill 3982, and it was the Dash 8 amendment in House Bill 2025 that basically just reprioritized what ODOT was doing, saying, don't do that, do this, stop doing that, let's do more of this. And what that would have done is it would have stabilized ODOT for 2 years, allowing them to do the job that we expect them to do, maintain and keep roads safe and paint lines and plow roads, etc.,
Yeah.
without losing one job and without raising taxes. And Democrats said no to that. They said, no, we want to raise your taxes and we need more money. We're not going to look at how ODOT does things and, oh, well, we'll put in accountability measures. But our bill actually said we're going to stop doing these things and we're going to start doing the things that Oregonians want. And they rejected that. So that's kind of how the session went, just on that bill, but on a lot of other things as well. I mean, Republicans were focused on four things, which were affordability, because we found out, doing polling, we know just by living that Oregon's become very hard to live in. It's very unaffordable.
Yeah.
We're focused on housing, we're focused on education and homelessness, those four things. And on the other side of the fence, Democrats, their agenda they ran was to do public union giveaways. And you can see that in House Bill or
Nine.
Senate Bill 916, right? Exactly, where striking workers now get 10 weeks of unemployment. Well, if you think of a school year, that's like a quarter of a school year. So that means striking workers in a public school negotiation can be out from September to November, getting paid to do that before any pain happens to the striking workforce. And of course, the school district's going to fold by then. So that's one of the things that public unions did, the public union giveaways. And then they had just other policies that made it expensive to be in Oregon. So everything we tried to do was try to make it more affordable. I mean, we were trying to do tax cuts. We had a bill for no tax on tips. We had a bill for no tax on overtime. Those things never got a hearing.
Which those things, actually, those particular ideas had supermajority support at the federal
Yes.
level.
Yes.
There was disagreement about many other things in the recently passed Big Beautiful Bill, but
Right.
those two things weren't the controversial ones, and they should have gotten at least a hearing. And obviously, it was too dangerous to give them a hearing because people would have loved it.
No, exactly. The rooms would have been filled with people saying, yes, no tax on my tips. And before the bill was House Bill 3914. And before I introduced it, it was my bill. I introduced it. I would go around to people in my district. I'd go get a coffee and I'd give them a tip and I'd say, would you like to not have to pay taxes on my tip? Oh, that'd be great. And I get a burger, same thing. Or I get my hair cut, same thing. Everybody who takes tips thought that was a fantastic idea. And I didn't have to ask them whether they were progressive liberal or uber conservative. To a man, to a woman, it was, yes, I don't want my tips taxed. And so, like you said, in the national campaign in 24, both presidential candidate Kamala Harris and Donald Trump both were for this idea. So I don't know why it didn't get a hearing, except for Democrats don't want to give up one dime that they're collecting today.
Yeah, and one thing struck me. I mean, the talking points on the national bill are very similar, maybe with less zeros on it, but very similar to the talking points that are used by naysayers for those two ideas for any tax cuts here in the state, which is it's for millionaires and billionaires.
Right.
Well, excuse me, but how many millionaires and billionaires are making their money off of overtime and tips?
I know that's exactly right. No, they're making it off of investment money usually. So, there was another bill that we had that I introduced, which basically took the standard deduction in Oregon on your income taxes and tripled it.
Yeah.
And the people who use standard deduction are not millionaires and billionaires. They itemize their deductions.
Right.
Who uses that are the poor and middle class. And so that would have been a tax cut, quote unquote, for the poor and middle class. And even that didn't get a hearing. We had a lot of momentum around the estate tax, which is the most punitive in Oregon, to modify that and modernize that.
Yeah.
But then at the last minute, they came in and said, okay, in order to raise the threshold from 1 million to 1.5 million, you have to have a pay for. You have to show us where we're going to make that money up. And the only way to do that is to raise the actual rate that you pay on the tax, which would be punitive, which then drives more people out of the state. It was like,
Yeah.
we're driving people out of state with this really bad policy. People decide that if I can't afford to live here and I can't afford to die here. And we did have a tax that we were able to kill finally, but it was going to be where we can't afford to visit here because there's going to be a increase in tax on the tourism tax by
No.
a percent and a quarter.
Yeah.
That died at the last minute. So it just was tax, 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 and just keeps coming back to the whole point that Democrats, their answer to everything is we need more money. We can't spend any less than we are. We can't reorganize the way we're doing it because it's perfect. Ergo, we need a new tax. We need a new source of revenue in order to fund this basic service.
And there is enormous evidence that what they're doing isn't perfect. They literally,
Right. Yeah.
their own auditors said that they lost $1 billion somewhere in the process.
Kevin, can I have you hold on just for a second?
Sure. I'll just tell you, folks, that what I'm referring to was auditors for the Department of Transportation said that they made a $1 billion error in estimating how much there would be available for funds based on the formulas that are used for federal matching funds. And they, made a mistake. They're literally incompetent when they're trying to manage money and they're trying to figure out a way that they can keep. They're just trying to figure out a way they can keep everything the way it is, which satisfies their primary interest group, which is actually mentioned here in an article. In this case, it's the SEIU. Melissa Unger of the SEIU. Is it her brother? I think brother Ben is a state representative. I believe the majority leader. I was just explaining to folks what that $1 billion was, that ODOT made an error.
Right.
And
Yeah.
these
Just a
guys are
billion.
just $1 billion. They're making errors all over the place.
Yeah.
They can't develop and run any IT systems. And then they've been going on a hiring spree here for the past 10 years, particularly in ODOT. And they can't figure out anywhere that they might be able to manage the money better. And I remember vividly the video early in the session that came out showing this empty ODOT headquarters.
Yes.
And that one was like, that made your point so well as to, gee, why are we paying for this building?
Right. So the ODOT, I think, is a 5-story building. And if you go to the fourth and fifth floor, they're empty. And they have people working remotely, et cetera. But part of our Republican plan was lease that out. If you're not using it, lease it out. So
it was like $57 million right there or something.
Yes, I mean it's just like this just doesn't make sense to air condition this and to heat it and to have it. It just doesn't make any sense. So when voters are approached with a new tax or a tax increase, the first question should be, how are you spending the money we give you already? That should always be the first question, because the assumption the assumption the person asking for the tax increase comes with is we're spending the money perfectly. We've tightened our belt as tight as we can. We're doing absolutely best. The only answer is more money. And usually when you're talking about agencies that like ODOT, which is a $5 to $6 billion agency, there's going to be some couch cushion money jingling around somewhere and way you can shift a department or consolidate or say, we're not going to do this function, even though it's nice and people kind of like that. We're going to make sure that the roads and bridges are safe. There's a lot of that you can do. And again, we were able to keep their budget within line, not lay off any ODOT workers, and do the core functions that they need to do for the next 2 years. And they rejected that. So it's kind of frustrating in that regard.
They put out a statement talking about the potential layoffs. They, of course, featured in the article Melissa Unger of SEIU.
And you mentioned Ben Unger. Yep. That's not the majority leader. Ben Bowman is the majority leader. So it's not her brother. It's not her brother. But yeah, I got you. Ben's around.
Yeah. He's a state rep, right? At this point.
No, Ben Bowman is, but I don't think that's her. I don't think that's her brother. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Unger Bowman. I don't. It could be.
Who knows? The first time that something would have been familial connections in Salem.
Yeah. Hmm. You
But
know what I always say about nepotism is that it's okay as long as you keep it in the family. So
yeah, that's right. Well, and I like to say that in Oregon, corruption is corruption in a cardigan. Everybody's very nice about it, and
that's right.
it doesn't offend anybody if it just continues, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't get cement shoes. You just like they do in New Jersey. You just
Right.
get
Right.
you just become
They.
unhireable in the
That's
state.
right. Or they at least give you floaties, so that's kind of neat
Yeah, that's right. You can
for your
float.
arm.
See your
Just
head
there.
bobbing around.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
That's right.
serves as an example to everyone else. Like, look at that guy.
That's
Yeah.
it. No, but as far as wasted money, or let's just say misspent money. If you, I was on the transportation committee during the interim, and there were 12 tours places we were run around the state to get public feedback and community feedback, and it's from Ontario to Hermiston to Coos Bay to Bend, the Dalles, Portland, I think the North Coast, Medford, Eugene, Albany. It was 12 places. And, and, we went around there and listened to everybody, and ODOT kept on saying, we need this much more money to stay whole. And the counties are saying, we need this much more money to stay whole. And the cities are saying, we need this much more money to stay whole. So I said, okay, I'm going to go about finding that money in our current budget, not looking at ODOT, but looking at the whole budget,
The whole
the
budget. Yeah.
120 billion dollar budget that's called Oregon State Government, which I think is 140 now. And that's an interesting fact too. In the last 10 years, the general fund budget is doubled in size. It's
Jeez.
doubled in size. The general fund budget. And the general fund budget is money that the legislature can spend any way it wants. It could spend it on schools, spend it on bridges, spend it on police officers. It could spend it on free lunches for school. It can spend it on anything. So that's always the most precious money because it can go anywhere. And that has doubled in size from 2015 to 2025. Yet the population hasn't doubled, but our taxes have. So,
And our
but
roads clearly are not twice as good or twice.
twice as good, right? And that's the thing you ask: are our roads twice as good? Is our public safety twice as good? Are our schools twice as good? The answer continues to be no, no, no. And this has been coming decades in the making with one party rule. So
Yeah.
we'd like to maybe change that this election cycle. But so I said I was going to go find the money in the big budget, and I just started with this one question: what if Oregon were no longer a sanctuary state? What do
Mm.
we pay for because we are a sanctuary state? If we change that one policy, how much money can I find? And so I started out with the Healthier Oregon program, which is health care for non-citizens. That was 800 billion to 800 million to 1.2 billion. I've heard a number up to 1.5 billion dollars of general fund money.
Yeah.
So there's money we can spend on schools. There's money we can spend on roads. There's money we can spend on public safety. We can spend on you can spend it anywhere you want. We're choosing. The legislature, the Democrats in the legislature are choosing to spend $1.2 billion there and then saying, oh, we don't have enough money for ODOT. So then I said, okay, well, what about how many non-citizens do we have incarcerated? Because that costs us money. Oh,
Yeah.
well, they can't collect that because a Department of Corrections says we're not allowed to ask people if they're citizens or not, according to this ORS. So I
Yeah.
said, okay, well, how do I figure this out? They did tell me how much it did cost per person per day. It's $183.14 per day to incarcerate somebody. So then I went to the federal number and I found out that federally we have about 20% of the population in federal prisons are non-citizens. So I thought, well, let's just use that number just for
Yeah.
giggles, just to see. Maybe it's higher because we have more non-citizens because we're a sanctuary state.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so maybe it's higher, maybe it's lower. I don't know, but let's just use 20%. That seems to be a decent number. So that number turns out to be $320 million we choose of general fund money to incarcerate non-citizens instead of commuting their sentences and deporting them.
Yeah.
That's a choice. That's a public policy choice. So now I'm getting close to $2
And
billion. Dollars. Yep.
especially now that
Right.
they are very unlikely to be able to come back like they used to.
Right,
So
right.
so that you feel better about commuting a sentence and deporting
And
someone.
deporting them, right, exactly. And that was the whole thing about the wall and getting the border tightened, is once you do that, then you can export the criminals that don't belong here out of the country, knowing
Yeah,
that they can't get back in. Otherwise it's just a revolving door, and that doesn't help. But
yeah,
now that we know that that has been locked down, or is much better, that's good. So then I said, okay, well, what about housing? Well, there's no way to get to that, but we know there's a lot of rental assistance. How about education? Well, we know there's a lot of that. No way to get to those numbers either. Then I thought of, well, how about there was one other area that I thought of for non-citizens. Oh, food stamps. So
yeah.
federally SNAP doesn't pay for non-citizens, but Oregon had a plan to add non-citizens to that, and that was going to be between 200 and 400 million dollars that we were going to use general fund money. So, pretty soon we're going to be talking real money here when we add all this stuff up. And again, so I just don't buy the argument we don't have enough money. We have lots of money. We've got a ton of money. We're just deciding to choose it. And this is just one policy I'm changing, saying let's not fund non-citizens. Let's take care of Oregonians first. Let's take care of their education. Let's take care of the roads. Let's take care of public safety first. And then if there's some money left over and we want to be kind and generous, fine. But let's not do that and then say, oh, we don't have enough. We need to tax you, the largest tax increase than the state has ever seen.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this too is that I think a Representative Deal mentioned once on our show that I think his estimate was about $100 million is being spent funding DEI positions throughout the state
Yes,
bureaucracy.
yes. Yeah,
That's more than just a small amount of money for something that literally doesn't build a single road, educate a
yep.
child, make the public safer. None of that. It's just money they spend.
It's public. In ODOT, there is a department called the Equity and Racial Justice Department. I think that's what it's called in ODOT itself. There's a department, and that's funded at $28 million a biennium. Right.
What's
So,
that
so we
one?
don't. Right. So we're spending $28 million on that thing, whatever that thing is, but we can't paint stripes on your load. We can't roads. We can't plow your roads. We can't fix
Yeah.
potholes, but we can spend $28 million on this thing over here. So again, there's lots of room in the budget. These are all policy choices that Republicans aren't making, Democrats have made, and then they come to you and say, we don't have enough to do the basic things. They're not telling you the truth in that regard. They have the money, they're just spending it in a different way than you and I would.
And I know that you guys are trying like hell to get the word out. I'm
Yep,
looking
yep,
right here at an article, KCBY 11. It it quotes Melissa Unger. It quotes an ODOT worker,
yeah.
and then it has a statement that's sent to KATU by ODOT saying, at this time, we know Oregonians will almost immediately begin to see noticeable impacts to the quality and reliability of our transportation system. Reductions will almost certainly include fixing fewer potholes, removing less graffiti, and clearing
Right.
less trash.
Yep.
They just
And
go on and they say
and
that. And then the second to last paragraph, there's half a sentence that says Republicans contended that Oregonians could not afford such increase and suggested using existing revenue instead. That is all
yep,
that
that's
is how
all.
the media captures a vociferous, well stated debate.
No, and what's going on is political blackmail, right? So what they're doing is they're going to cut the positions that are going to hurt Oregonians the most, so
Yep.
that when that pain comes around, they're going to say, "See, those Republicans, they wouldn't go for a tax increase. You need to call your representatives and senators and tell them we need to fund ODOT." That's what they're going to say. And it's political blackmail. The money's there. There's plenty of money there. There's lots of money there. We showed it. Just look at House Bill 3982. Just look at the Dash 8 amendment on House Bill 2025. We can do it without raising taxes. They refuse to do it because their whole thing is we want more money. We want more money. We want more money. I mean, that's always they have a problem. The answer is tax and spend. We don't, our education's poor, cat tax. We need more money for this. We need more money for wildfire. Oh, we'll tax the tobacco pouches. You know, it's just crazy. They've got all, and anytime they have a problem, they don't go say, are we spending this money wisely? No, that's a given in their mind. What they say is, you still have too much. We need more of it. Hand it over, and then we'll take care of the thing that we're holding blackmail over you.
This is happening at every level of government. I can tell you this we're not gonna do the things that you really want government to do, um, unless you give us more money so that we can actually use it to do the things that we want to do that would never sell to the
Right,
public. And they're
right.
doing it, and I've seen it in Eugene and Salem, the city council, the county
Yeah.
commissions, sometimes in various parts of the state. They're all doing this, and they're basically saying, they're calling, like in Eugene, they call it a fire tax. Only 20% of it goes to the fire department. It's not an
Right.
increase, so it's just a scam.
It
And
is, and like, you know, we say the general fund budget has increased, is doubled over the last 10 years. Where most of that goes is to people. So more and more people are being hired on as state workers to get the state
mhm,
benefits, the state pension, the state employee, and then they're part of the union. So guess who benefits from that? The public unions, who then run candidates. So they will protect public workers and create bigger agencies, so there'll be more public union workers who get state salaries, who then pay public union dues, and on it goes.
yeah, and they, as you mentioned, elect the people that they end up negotiating with for their contract.
Yes, yes, right.
And
The governors, yeah, yeah, yeah.
now we're going to pay those people through the unemployment uh, insurance fund to go strike against government until the people they elected to negotiate with them give in.
Yep.
Um, Gee, what could go wrong with this scenario? It's all going to lead to so much more. It's everything we're getting and frankly not getting right now is going to just become more expensive.
No, it is. And that's one of the reasons why Oregon is one of the most expensive states to live in, why things are so unaffordable. I mean, uh, the problem, House Bill 2025 not only increased the gas tax by, it was first at 15 cents, and then I think it was like 10 cents. It indexed it to inflation after that, which then causes inflation.
Yeah,
Right. So it's a dog chasing its tail at that point. The worst thing you ever want to do is artificially raise the price of energy or labor in an economy, because that drives the prices of everything else up. And if
yeah,
you're indexing to those price increases, then you keep indexing to the price increases, and things, it just goes around and around and around. It's the worst thing you can do. Actually, the best thing you can do in an inflationary period, the one thing I wanted to do as a state during the Biden years, when inflation went up about 25%, 26% over 4 years, was to cut taxes to give Oregonians more money so they could deal with this thing called inflation.
yeah, and thus force the government, the state government, to do the things that
To do
people
the
really
core
expect.
services, when
Yeah,
we're in a situation where we don't have enough money. I mean, when you and I, if we, our paychecks dropped, or if we lost our jobs, the first thing you do is you say, okay, I've got to tighten my belt. Okay, no more going and eating out, no more going getting expensive coffees, no more going to the movies. I'm going to have to cut back some of my subscriptions. Sir, you start going through the inventory of things you're spending on to cut that back. And then after you've done that, you assess and go, do I need to go get more revenue?
see, what we
Right.
really should have is we should have. I could go for these taxes, a tax or a fee that we charge people, and we call it the DEI tax. It's going to fund all of the DEI, and all you have to do is vote for it. We'll put it right on the ballot. We'll refer it to the ballot, and then people can actually. And then the other one is the empty buildings tax. I want everybody
Mm,
to get on board
yeah.
with the empty buildings tax and see how that one does. And when it
Yep.
fails, we stop doing those things. That would
Yep.
really be great.
No, I think, again, the, the, the thing is, government has gotten too broad, too deep, too big. And once a program starts, it just continues on into eternity. And that shouldn't be. We should be looking at these things and going, does that work? If it doesn't work, can we reform it? If we can't reform it, let's end it. right?
Yeah,
And let's go do something
favorite
else.
one of my favorite sayings from Ronald Reagan was the closest thing to eternal life on earth is a government program. And
That's right.
it's
It's
true, it
true.
never dies.
It
You
never
know?
dies. And that's why you never want to, that's why I'm always against adding new taxes or adding new programs or adding new things, because I just know they get a life of their own and then they get a constituency, and then it's really hard to cut them or eliminate them, because now you have people calling you, you have people showing up at your doorstep, you have people coming to the committee hearing. All of a sudden you're the bad person.
Yeah. Yeah. And not paying attention to the person who's going to cut their program who doesn't have to do it because they could just
Right.
actually do some belt tightening. And you're right. Before they start asking people who are already tightening their belts, barely getting
Yeah.
by out in the economy, some of the people that you mentioned would be the subject of these tax cuts and the standard deduction increases.
Yep.
Um, Before you ask those people to continue paying what they're paying or paying more, the government should actually tighten its belt, and they're saying they can't do it.
I
So
know.
that should put a lie to all of this. Now, it seems like the Democrats also kind of mismanaged this session because they got a supermajority. They obviously ran into some of the people in their own party who wouldn't vote for things. It was that bad.
Yep.
Um, but they also kind of waited until the end, kind of screwed around a lot. And OPB really took them to task, saying there wasn't this HB 2025. It didn't show up until like June 9th or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It did, we kept on hearing they're going to introduce it, they're going to introduce it, they're going to introduce it. And they just couldn't get it right in drafting. And so by the time they brought it out, it was really late, and it was really bad. Right. So it wasn't like there was something, I mean, there was a lot of talk, a lot of discussion in the committee, but it was all theoretical until you have a bill in front of you. And they introduced it really late and then just couldn't get that thing across the finish line. And we're all thankful for that, because it would have been a doozy as far as the cost, because not only would have been immediately, I think, a 10-cent increase on your gas tax and doubling your registration and new car tax and blah blah blah. um, it would have, it's not just personally that hurts, is so you go to the grocery store. Well, how do the groceries get there? Oh, they get there by truck. Oh, the truck's going to pay more. And how's the truck get it? Oh, it gets it from the farmer. Oh, the farmer's going to, and this thing just trickles through your economy, the supply chain of everything you buy, everything you do. Oh, there was a delivery charge for Amazon, UPS, and FedEx. So now everything you order online was going to become more expensive.
Yeah.
So it just kept, it was the gift that kept on giving as far as increasing the cost of living in Oregon. So we can all be thankful that thing did die.
So it was interesting too that the governor didn't really step in until the very last second. She kept
Right.
trying to stay above the fray and let everybody else argue. And then at the last minute, she showed up, tried to go and throw her weight around and threaten some people's programs and funding is what I heard. But
Right.
then obviously that was too late. It failed. They didn't get something, and then she blasted the lawmakers for not working long enough, which
Right.
is
Yeah.
ironic because 3 days prior to the end of the session, she signed a bill that would literally pay people to leave work and go on strike. And
That's right.
a little,
I was thinking maybe I could do that, but yeah, it's the House Republican 503 or something like that, but local 503. But yeah, I just think that it was, once Republicans came out with our plan that basically said we can do what needs to be done, keep ODOT jobs, do the basic maintenance for another 2 years without raising the cost to anyone. It really put the Democrats in a bad position, because they were saying the only way out of this box, and we need to find permanent solutions. And that's always like, there is never a permanent solution. There is never a permanent solution. You're only fixing as far as you can see, and usually as far as you can see is really 2 years. And so, I mean, look at education, the cat tax, 2019, that bill passed, and we have now a gross receipts tax that Oregonians rejected. 3 years later, the legislature passes it, and what do we hear from education? We don't have enough money, right? So
yeah.
did it fix it? No, it just gave them more money, and we're 48th in the nation, I think, as far as education goes. So I know we
Yep.
can work hard to get to 50th, but we're trying, we're trying.
Well, so a couple other topics that I know are really important. You mentioned housing,
Yep.
um, which I think is different from homelessness based on what
Oh
is
yeah.
needed to solve it. Because everybody talks about this when they are frank and honest, which is that giving a fentanyl addict a house doesn't do anything for the fentanyl addict, but it just makes it more expensive because the fentanyl addict's going to be a fentanyl addict, right? And then
So
meanwhile,
yeah,
you've got housing shortages that literally make it so that local economies cannot thrive because they simply aren't allowed to even have enough housing for people to move to some place where there might be jobs.
right. My dad used to tell me this. He said, well, you can just think of this. When you go on a trip and you rent a car, are you really careful with that car? Yeah, you kind of are, but you don't want to get it scratched because you'll get called. But if you drive over something or a big bump or whatever, or you cut a corner or you go really fast, or you slam on the brakes. Yeah, this is just a rental. And that's the thing. When you give somebody a house that doesn't earn that house, they're not
Yeah.
going to take care of it. Why would they take care of it? If I trash this thing, they'll give me another one. Is the attitude. And so yeah, housing and homelessness are two different things. Homelessness is driven by drug addiction, and property crime is driven by drug addiction. And if we would just deal with drug addiction in the sense that we would stop making it cool and easy and accessible to access these drugs, not try to fix it on the back end, which is really, 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 really hard when someone gets addicted. But if we'd really focus on the front end of the problem, um, actually putting a stigma on using these drugs as opposed to them being cool or it's okay, then I think we'd be in much better position as far as the homelessness goes. And uh, we had a bill that basically would have fixed the tent city problem, that we passed a law in 2021 that was mirrored a Supreme Court decision. Supreme Court rolled back their decision, but Oregon had this law stuck there, so cities and counties couldn't do anything. And we
Boise
had a bill that would,
decision. Yeah.
that's right. And we had a bill that would repeal it. Democrats would not do that. They like, I guess they like tent cities.
Yeah, and it's ironic that the decision that was made by the Supreme Court was the Grants Pass case.
Yep.
It was a town here in Oregon that said, "Hey, I think we need to have more latitude as to what we do in order to satisfy the needs of where people are allowed to live, especially on public land." But yeah, so we've boxed ourselves in this state. We've said, "Well,
Yep.
there's no way we can solve it," and by the way, we made some laws that make it impossible. So we just need more
That's
money.
right. That's right. That's exactly it. So we can build more shelters.
Yeah.
Shelters are the answer. And it's like, how about we deal with the root problem? I wrote an article. Gosh, it was probably July of 24, maybe May of 24. It's called "There's a Hole in the Boat," and it's the idea that you're out on a cruise, and all of a sudden the captain comes up to you and says, "Hey, I don't want you to be alarmed, but we have a big hole in the starboard side of the boat. But don't worry, we have people coming with buckets, and we'll be fine." It's like, are you crazy? No, no. And if that's not enough, we'll get more people with more buckets to fix the problem. It's like, how about we just pull over and fix the hole in the boat?
Yeah.
Instead of hiring people to bail water out of the boat. This is stupid, and that's kind of what we do. We don't fix the problem. We don't fix the hole in the boat. We hire workers to bail water.
Well, we've actually gotten to the point where we're hiring workers to throw more water into the boat because
Yes, yes,
some
right,
of
yeah.
these nonprofits literally are trying to make it a sustainable and affordable lifestyle to just do fentanyl and meth on the streets.
Yeah,
And
the
then
nonprofit industrial complex. Yes.
exactly, exactly, which is also unaccountable because once it goes into that nonprofit, it disappears behind like a curtain that you can't see through to see what they're
Right.
actually doing with the money.
Yeah, and there was a bill, and I can't remember. I think it was Senator Hayden had it, maybe when he was representative, basically that would cap if you got X percent of money of your nonprofit money from government, your CEO's salary and your top salaries could only be so high. And of course, that went nowhere as well.
Yeah, and there's some really nice salaries,
Oh yeah.
some in the six figures.
Yep. Quite nice. Yep. So
So another thing that happened, because I know this is a major issue, and they held it hostage till the end, was the wildfire map, which I know has
yeah.
a tremendous effect on your district. Um,
Yes.
and so, what are your thoughts on that and the upcoming wildfire season, which they constantly tell us is going to be terrible and bad, and get ready for it? But then that discussion just doesn't seem to happen about, well, what if we just manage the forest so that we, and we could pay for all the forest management and the firefighting that still is needed
If
by,
we cut those trees,
yeah,
weird.
and
Yeah.
not all of them, just
No,
some of
just some of
them.
them. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, so Senate Bill 83 did get across the finish line, and that repealed the wildfire maps, and that was being held hostage by Democrats before, so that we would do some other things, that we'd stay in the building, we wouldn't walk out, etc. So, fortunately, behind all the minutia and all the maneuvering, etc., that bill came forward and did pass. So that's good. That should help a lot of people. And there were a lot of mandates that were on people to harden their private property and do certain things, and those requirements are now gone. But still, federal funding comes in to help us mitigate some things. So, my hope is that the Trump administration will direct the Forestry Department and the Bureau of Land Management a little differently than it's been managed before, and actually get out there and clear the forests a bit so that we don't have these raging fires, especially around the perimeter of cities like La Pine, which is a city in my district, which is just surrounded by a forest and almost burned down last year. So,
Yeah.
and it's all federal land. So if the feds would do their job, then I think we'll be in good shape. And I'm hoping the Trump administration will actually get some of that done.
I know we're kind of waiting to see the actions and the follow through, because up until now, there's been some really good messages and some executive orders, but then it goes into this bureaucracy, which
Yeah.
is split into five different groups, and they all point at each other
Right.
and say it's someone else's, fault. But having said that, President Trump doesn't seem to be messing around. Like,
Nope.
there the country of Iran is saying that right now, and there's other groups that are starting to think he might mean business, and so the Interior Secretary Burgum is actually
Yep.
really on top of this, and so I'm
Yep.
with a state that's 60% federal land.
It
Uh,
is.
this is hopeful, and I think your district's probably a higher percentage than that.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. So I'm hopeful that this summer's been interesting. It's been hot, but then we get thunderstorms, and they haven't really been a whole lot of lightning strikes. But it's been rain, so it keeps things a little damp and wet, and so things don't catch fire quite as easily. But I mean, the narrative is, oh, it's global warming or it's climate change, ergo every year is going to be worse than the year before it. And that if you strip away that assumption and just take each year as a year in the climate, which changes all the time, it's not necessarily true that this year will be worse than last year.
Yeah, because summer keeps coming back. And if they would just manage I mean, the climate
Yep.
change argument has really just turned into what should be a more powerful argument for everybody who adheres to that, to manage the forests. Um,
Yes.
and you're not going to
Right.
control the temperature anytime
No.
soon. And they have no evidence, by the way, that any of these things they've been doing is controlling the temperature.
Right. I asked that on the House floor the other day, and somebody wasn't too happy with me. I said, how much of the billions of dollars we've spent in Oregon on climate change policy have we affected the temperature in Oregon?
Yeah,
And it was quite silent.
yeah.
But
It's
I
like,
I could feel the glares. You can't ask that question.
that's an un that is an illegal question.
No,
You
not supposed to
cannot
ask that.
ask.
It reminds me of if we had a problem with education, which we do, and let's say I came up with this great theory that the reason our education system's so poor is because we don't have enough number two pencils. And if every student had five number two pencils, one and then four backups, uh, I can guarantee you that education scores would soar. And so everybody buys into my theory on pencils. And I say, with this, we're going to bring in manufacturers that manufacture pencils from the forest to the manufacturing, right to the school. I'll be an entire organ industry. It's going to boost our economy. And we do all that, and everybody has five number two pencils. Every student does. And I slap myself on the back, say, see, we did it. What question haven't I asked yet?
How
How,
much did we get better? Yeah.
how much did education get better? Right. And that's the question you can never ask. How much did the climate get better?
Plus, you're going to get a nasty phone call from the pencil manufacturing industrial complex.
That
So,
complex that's going to be mad that I'm gonna gut jobs because I'm asking the question that needs to be asked, and the question that always needs to be asked in the climate change argument is what we're doing working? Can you show us a decline in the increase in rate or whatever, or is it getting better, or is it about the same? And Oregon's like 0.4, 0.13% of all the climate, man-made carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So when China does 27%, can Oregon do anything? Even when we went to net zero, where we would consume as much carbon dioxide as we expelled, if it was net zero, the climatologist in 2018 from Oregon State said that the notice in the climate would be imperceptible. Right. And
yeah.
so he said that imperceptible. And then when he was challenged on it later, he said, well, it's a moral obligation we have. It's like, well, I don't hire you as a climatologist to give me moral opinions. I
Yeah.
hire you as a climatologist to give me science. And you gave me the science. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's right. That was when they do that in Washington D.C. They call that a Washington gaffe,
Yeah. Right.
because it's the Salem version. But
It was the
um,
Salem gaffe. Yeah.
if you have a little bit more time, there's just a couple other topics I thought we could hit on. One is we did talk a little bit about the national level and President Trump, and it seems like the Democrats are all ready to blame everything that they failed at, which we just gave
Yes,
a laundry list of it, and they can't pay for anymore with the funds because they're losing some of these federal funds because they
they
refuse to
are.
actually do the right thing with it.
So that's a policy choice. That's a policy choice. We're not going to roll back our DEI policies. We're going to keep them. And the consequence is we're going to lose federal funding. Well, just change the policy. It's that
Yeah,
simple. And
it
if
is.
you won't do it, elect Republicans and we'll do it and we'll get the federal funding and we'll move on. Have a nice day.
Yeah, and this is happening around Medicaid and the stuff that Democrats are saying all these people in the state are dependent on Medicaid, which the rolls have been dramatically swelled over the last since
Yes, yes.
Obamacare. It's huge, and they're saying basically all these people are going to be destitute, except the people, according to the big beautiful bill, that are being eliminated from receiving federal funds to pay for it are people who are A, not eligible, and B, illegal in the
Right.
state, in the country.
And frankly, Medicaid's a real important program, and I understand we need that, and there's people that really do need that, but we need to get back to the basics on that and say, let's do Medicaid for what it's intended. I'm always flabbergasted when Democrats are so excited that 1/3 of Oregonians are on Medicaid. That's like a celebratory point for them. It's like that's awful. That means we've got insurance prices and we've got jobs that are not good enough to afford private insurance, which is way, 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 way better.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a problem with the insurance market in the whole. And so the only place they can go is to Medicaid. And we should really roll that back to be again what it was originally designed for. It was for the poorest of the poor. It was not for non-citizens, it was for citizens. And we should be encouraging people to improve their lives so that they don't need Medicaid, they can get it somewhere else.
Plus, I think, it would be really inexpensive, a big cost saver if you mentioned earlier about commuting and deporting people that are in jail. It would also be really helpful to just not even have some of them here that are hardened criminals, gang members, rapists, murderers. Be great if they
Yeah.
kind of just left. Uh,
Yes.
and when our local law enforcement could easily help the feds
Sure.
identify them and remove them, because who else wants them out of here? The the immigrants that are here, that are not
Legally, yes,
criminals.
yeah, no, exactly, you know, when I say, okay, let's say I'm a non-citizen drug dealer in Idaho, and all of a sudden, Idaho State Police and the Idaho City Police, and they're all working with ICE to deport me, right? Am I going to just self-deport back to wherever I came from, whether that's Russia or Mexico or wherever? Am I going to do that? Or am I going to just go, oh, let me go to Oregon where I can hide and continue my
Yeah.
business?
I'll
I'll
get
tell you
help
where
hiding.
I'll get help hiding. I can get funding hiding. Right, exactly. So this is the whole problem with this sanctuary state. It's not compassionate. It's in the final analysis, it is really theft. It's theft of jobs. It's theft of opportunity. It's theft of public money. It's just theft, theft, theft. It's theft of education slots. It's really, really not great.
And they're telling a lot of lies about this federal bill, but it sounds like what has them really angry is that the bluff's been called. Now they're going to have to
Yep.
face the music. There's data they can't present, which would tell the truth about
Yep.
what's really happening with this money here. So I would, on the whole, that's pretty decent news because it means Medicaid could actually go to the people who really need it. Um,
Correct. And that's exactly what should happen. It should go there, and we should stop subsidizing or using our general fund tax dollars, state dollars, to fund non-citizen healthcare. That just does not make any sense, especially when you say you need more money for roads.
yeah, yeah. So the last thing I thought we might touch upon is you had a really good post that you did on your website, which also appeared on Oregon Catalyst, Freedom From and Freedom To. And I'm going to
Mm,
post
mm.
that here for folks, but I wondered if you could kind of give people the hit the treetops on that one and what you wanted to share with folks there, and then they can go read it more detail on their own.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's just the idea that, what does freedom mean? And I'm reading a book right now by this concept came to me from a guy named Os Guinness, who's a philosopher, English philosopher, and basically he said that freedom has two components to it. It's got freedom from, and so we are free from tyranny, right? That's what our founders decided, that they didn't want to be ruled by King George III, and without representation, they wanted to self-govern. And so they wanted freedom from that tyranny. And so that's the freedom from part. But that's just not the whole part of freedom. Then there's a freedom too. There's a purpose that we are free. And that purpose is within a moral framework. And so you can't just be free to do pot all day long, 24 hours a day, and then go around and say, I need Medicaid, and I need food stamps, and I need whatever from other people because I've chosen to do pot. If you do pot 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you're strung out and whatever, then that's on you. Good luck with that. Have a nice day. But we don't owe anything to you. Now, if you want help, we'll be willing to help you get out of that cycle. But while you're in that, we have no obligation to you to house you, to clothe you, to feed you. We have no obligation to do that as a state. And so that's the freedom too, where there's a purpose, freedom too, and it's called the pursuit of happiness. And happiness back in 1776 wasn't just a euphoric feeling. Happiness was actually living virtuously, trying to find how to live wisely and to pursue those things. So to use your talents, to use your gifts, to use your ambition to improve your own lot in life. That is why you are free to do those things, not to just string yourself out in drugs or be drunk all the time or to cause problems in society or go riot in downtown Portland. That's not what you're free to do. You're free to do this higher purpose thing. So it's a freedom from from tyranny. And I would say the left has taken that freedom from, and they said, no, the real freedom is freedom from morality. And that's a big mistake, because you do that when people get to decide their own morality, then all you do is create chaos. And then people say, save us from this chaos. And then big government comes in and says, we'll save you from your chaos, but we own you now. So it's freedom from tyranny, not from morality. And then it's freedom to virtuous living.
That is a great way to wrap up our show tonight, because that kind of puts a bow on everything we talked about and puts
Yep.
it in the context of our 249th birthday as a nation and what it means.
Woohoo!
Yep. On to 250, but but Representative Reschke, thank you for joining us here tonight. It had been a while since we had you on, and it's great having you on again. And
I got kicked out of the coffee shop, so they were closing. I wasn't too loud, but they were closing. So I moved to my mobile unit here. So
it's perfect, and we roll with the punches here, and it was a great show. And if folks want more information about you, it looks like they can go to Werner4FOR Oregon.com. And your state representative site is OregonLegislature.gov/ and then your last name, Reschke.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us.
Follow me on social media. I'm on X and on Instagram. And
they can find all that on your website, I think, if they go there.
They can. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you so much again for joining us. Good luck with the non-session time, and I guess we'll see if there is a special session to come. Who knows?
Who knows?
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Thank you, Representative.
Thanks, Kevin. Take care.
Bye-bye. And thanks, everyone, for joining us here tonight. We'll see you on the next episode of the Captive Audience tomorrow night. I will have Representative Virgil Osborne.